Texas A&M is going to have a top 5 running back room in all college football.
You are Locked On Aggies, your daily podcast on the Texas A&M Aggies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on into Locked On Aggies. I'm your host, Andrew Stefaniak. Thanks for making Locked On Aggies your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. I told you all yesterday that I was going to come at you today with a bold statement, and I think I did just that. I think that Texas A&M's running back room is one of the most not talked about enough position groups in all of college football. I mean, I am all in on this Texas A&M running back room. I'm fully convinced that these 4 running backs of Le'Veon Moss, Rueben Owens, Mari Daniels, and E.J. Smith make up one of the best rooms in all college football. Because I really do believe you have 4 guys who all could start at a lot of places. All are really good. Now, those of you that have heard me talk about this running back room know that I also believe that you have a room where I think those 2 guys are going to take over. I think you're going to see Le'Veon Moss and Rueben Owens end up being the guys. I think they're going to kind of take over and be the legit dudes of this room. Now, the thing about the running back room is you see this all the time. You see injuries. You see players get banged up. That'll happen. You're going to see Rueben Owens and Le'Veon Moss. You know, someone might get a little banged up and have to miss one game or something like that. And if that were to happen, Amari Daniels and E.J. Smith, I think, are both capable running backs. And that's what's so good about this room, I think, is the depth. I think you've got 4 guys that are really good. And I would love to see another running back room that has that much depth. I know at Ohio State, you got the one dude, I forget his name, that's really good, and then Judkins. So, I mean, they're great. I think they're number 1. It's going to be hard to beat that. But I think there's a world that this running back room, if they have the season, I believe they can't be a top 5 running back room in college football this year. You know, just looking at the talent there. I mean, Le'Veon Moss is a talented player. We know Rueben Owens is a super, super talented player. And I don't think people are talking enough about the chance that Rueben Owens is going to make this sophomore leap. And I really believe he is. We see this happen all the time with 5 stars. They're solid as freshmen, and then their sophomore year, you go, holy moly, that dude exploded onto the scene out of nowhere. I think you're going to see that happen with Rueben Owens. I really do believe he's fully ready to take the SEC by storm. I think that he's going to take over. I think there's a world. The problem here, and I don't think that any of these running backs are going to be able to be a top 5 to 10 running back in college football, despite me thinking they can be a top 5 room, is because I think there's going to be a lot of split carries. I think it's going to be hard for any of these running backs to get 1,000 yards. So I want to pull up what happened with Kansas State's running back room last year. So last year, they did have one guy kind of take over, and that was Giddens. He had 223 carries for 1,226 yards. Then you had Ward with 124 carries and 643 yards. So where this will get interesting, and that was really it. I mean, you really had 2 running backs as the guys in Kansas State's running back room last year, which of course is where Texas A&M's offensive coordinator Colin Klein comes from. Now, you know, when you look at this, it's really easy for me to say that I think the reason I don't think one player gets to 1,000 yards, and it could happen, but I want to explain this. I think that, you know, Giddens was kind of the guy and Ward was the change of pace, the guy. I think you're going to see Rueben Owens and Le'Veon Moss be really split in carries to where they both have 800 yards rushing, or they both have 750 or 900, whatever it ends up being. And I'm not saying to the number, but I mean, I think the carries are going to be a lot closer. Giddens had 99 more carries than Ward. I think you're going to see that be pretty close. I think you're going to see those 100 carries split each way to where it's really even. So while I believe that this turns into a two-headed monster, I think that it's going to be hard for one. Now, if I had to pick the running back that I believe will end up being the guy, I've said it. I know a lot of y'all disagree, and I get it, and that's fair. I'm leaning Rueben Owens. I think he's going to take this monstrous step from what he was last year to what he's going to be this year. So I'm a huge believer in that and what he's going to develop into this year. I really do think that he's getting ready to just take the SEC by storm. I think he's going to have a huge season. If I had to predict a guy to have that many, it would be him. But Le'Veon Moss is a great player. So, and it's funny when I talk about how good I believe Rueben Owens is going to be, I don't want y'all to take that as, that means that Andrew doesn't think, he thinks that Rueben Owens is going to be really good, so he doesn't think that Le'Veon Moss is going to be great. That's not what I'm saying at all. I think they're both going to be really good. I just give these slight, and when I say slight, I'm talking 51-49, slight edge to Rueben Owens in this running back room. And then, you forget, I think we all forget how good Amari Daniels was last year at times. I mean, let's pull up his numbers. Last year, Amari Daniels had, let me find the numbers. It's being a little slow. Last year, Amari Daniels had 532 yards. I mean, he led the running back room last year. 6 touchdowns, 105 carries. But I still believe that Le'Veon Moss is going to be the guy. Yards per carry wise, Amari Daniels was the best running back on the team last year. He averaged 5.1 yards per carry to Le'Veon Moss's 5, and Rueben Owens last year struggled with yards per carry at only 3.8. I think that you're going to see Rueben Owens really improve on that number. But so that's what's so funny. I'm not trying to take anything away from Amari Daniels. I'm not trying to act like he isn't a great player, because he is. I just think the other two guys are a little bit better. It's a good problem to have. I think Amari Daniels is a great running back, an all-around outstanding running back. I really do believe that. I just think it's going to be a little hard for, I think it's going to be a little hard for him to get into this room and to really have a effect, just based on the fact that I think the other two guys are going to be so good. So I'm anxious to see how this ends up working itself out. And then EJ Smith, I remember I talked to Spencer McLaughlin, who hosts our Locked On College Football, the national show. He told me, because he used to do a lot of Pac-12 stuff, he told me that he believes that EJ Smith in the right system can be a great player. And maybe I haven't been talking enough about EJ Smith, but the problem is you can't have 4 running backs out there unless you're bringing out one of the craziest sets I've ever seen in my life. You know what I mean? Like schemes. I mean, so I'm all in on Rueben Owens and Le'Veon Moss. And then I think you have great pieces behind them in Amari Daniels and EJ Smith. But I mean, I'm genuinely curious. This is one of the rooms I can't seem to figure out this running back room. I go back and forth all the time on my opinions and who do I like and who's going to be the guy and who's going to be the backup and who's going to play the roles, and all that. I keep going back and forth and back and forth. But let me know in the YouTube comments, how do y'all feel? Who's going to be the guy? I have a feeling a lot of y'all are going to lean Le'Veon Moss. So let me ask you this question this way. A, do you think that Le'Veon Moss and Rueben Owens end up being, A and B in this running back room? Let me know that. And then after you let me know that, let me know if you had to pick one, who would you pick and what would the percentage be? Like I said, I would take Rueben Owens like 51 to Le'Veon Moss's 49. Would y'all take Le'Veon Moss 60-40? Like, how would you break that down? I want to hear how y'all feel about this running back room as a whole. So let me know those things in the YouTube comments. Now, another podcast that I watch brought up an interesting topic about who's the dark horse playoff team in the SEC. And I'm going to talk about where Texas A&M falls in that conversation. We'll talk about that coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. But first, I got to tell y'all about our friends over at Game Time. Everydayers here at Locked On Aggies know that I absolutely love Game Time. I might be Game Time's #1 fan. I love how easy the app is to use. I love how easy it is to find a good seat in their app. You know, you can look and see what your seat looks like, whether you're going to a ball game or a concert or theater or a comedian. You can see what the vantage point to your seat looks like through the Game Time app. I absolutely love that feature. And then I love on top of that they have the best last minute ticket prices. Sometimes I'll be sitting at the house and I'll go, man, I kind of want to go to a baseball game today, right? I want to go see a baseball game. Well, I go to Game Time and I get cheap tickets last minute because that is why they are the best. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. So I want to have a different type of conversation. You know, we've discussed what would it take for Texas A&M to make the playoff. And yes, I want to continue to reiterate before we have this conversation and people tell me that the aliens are coming for me because I'm crazy. I want to reiterate this one more time. I do not believe Texas A&M is going to make the playoff. So I think that the conversation needs to be broken down like this. I think there's two teams in Texas and Georgia that if they don't make the college football playoff, something went horribly, horribly, horribly wrong. Then I think you have this next layer of teams. And I think it's Tennessee, Ole Miss, Missouri. I'm forgetting somebody. Tennessee, Ole Miss, Missouri, Alabama. Let me look up the SEC. SEC, I'm forgetting one team. I think, okay, Missouri, Georgia. Oh, and LSU. That's the last team, and LSU. And then I think you have the next layer of teams, and that's where Auburn and Florida and Texas A&M, and then you could probably throw South Carolina and Arkansas, some of the not as good teams in that layer. I'd say you could throw South Carolina in that layer, Florida and Auburn. And I think that'd be fair. I don't think I put Arkansas in there. I don't think I put Mississippi State. I don't think I put Vandy. I think that's how I would do it. And I think of those teams, of those three teams, which would be Auburn and Florida and South Carolina, of those three teams, I think the team with the best chance, the long shot chance to make the college football playoff would be Texas A&M without any kind of doubt. And in all honesty, I think Texas A&M has a better chance than some of those other teams, not Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss makes the playoff. I think that, when you look at, I know Missouri's schedule, you look at that, I think there's a world. Oh, and Kentucky's probably mixed in there with the group I talked about as well. Florida, Kentucky, Auburn, South Carolina. And I'm taking Texas A&M once again out of that group. Now, you kind of look at this and I think you could, you got to mix Oklahoma in somewhere, and I still take Texas A&M there. But I don't believe Texas A&M is going to make the playoff. I've said that time and time again, but I do believe that you can have the conversation of like, hey, if everything falls right, if everything goes Texas A&M's way, if everything goes right when it comes to winning the toss-up games that we talk about all the time here at Locked On Aggies, if all of that happens, I believe that there's a small chance that they can make the playoff. Now, you've got to understand, I like to pull up my schedule here because you've got to, like, if we got any Texas fans in here listening to this conversation, laughing at me, like, you've got to listen to the schedule before you do that because it is one of the more manageable schedules in college football. So Notre Dame at home, I think that's a winnable game. A lot of people don't. I think it's a winnable game. Although I'm actually starting to see some people predict Texas A&M to win that game. McNeese is a win. At Florida, toss up, but a winnable game. Bowling Green's a win. Arkansas at AT&T Stadium is a win. I think Missouri at home is a very winnable game. At Mississippi State is a winnable game. I don't want to say a win because it's on the road. LSU at home, I think it's a winnable game at home. If it was on the road, I wouldn't say it was, but it's at home. South Carolina on the road is a winnable game. New Mexico State is a win. At Auburn, winnable game. Texas at home is, you still got to say that there's a world where you can win that one, but it's a tough one to win. So the point is, you can lose 2 games. You can lose to LSU at home and Texas at home and beat Missouri and Notre Dame and take care of business on the road against teams that are not as good as you, win 10 games and sneak into the playoff. Like, that's the reality here. And I think people forget, if you go over to some of our friends over at FanDuel and you look at the win total for Texas A&M, set at 8.5, because 9 wins is, and I would take the over. I really do believe Texas A&M wins 9 football games this year. I think 9 wins is very, very gettable for this program right now because of the schedule. Once again, you've got to remember, you've got to take the perspective to this. You know, when I explain this conversation to people, a lot of people don't get it. And I say, I'm strictly making these arguments because of the schedule. If you had to play Georgia and Athens and Alabama at home and Ole Miss in Oxford, instead of like Florida and South Carolina and Mississippi State, we wouldn't be having the same conversation. We would be having a can Texas A&M make a bowl game conversation. This conversation is strictly based on the schedule Texas A&M plays, not the talent of the team. That's just the reality. And I think Texas A&M is a talented team, and I think they're going to have a better season than a lot of people give them credit for. But I also don't think that they're going to be as good as some people, I think they're going to be better than a lot of people think. That's what I'm trying to get at here. So is it likely that Texas A&M makes the college football playoff? No. But of that group, the Kentuckys and Auburns and Floridas and South Carolinas of the world, I take Texas A&M with the best chance to sneak out and make the college football playoff just based off the schedule. So that's kind of my take there. I'm really in on that. So, I mean, if y'all think I'm crazy, let me know in the YouTube comments. I get it. I really do. But I see there being a world where Texas A&M is able to sneak in and everything has to go right too. That's the thing also. You got to remember that everything has to go right. If everything doesn't go right, Texas A&M ain't making the playoff. Everything's got to go right. You have to win those tough road games against Florida and Auburn, and you have to beat 2 teams that you probably shouldn't at home, whether it's Notre Dame, Texas, LSU, or Missouri. You got to go 2-2 in those 4 games, and you got to go 2-0 on the road against Auburn and Florida, and then still take care of business against Mississippi State and South Carolina and Arkansas and those teams. I mean, that's the reality here. But to say it's not possible, I also don't believe that, because I do think there is a world where if Texas A&M overachieves, it's very possible that they could potentially win 10 football games. And if you win 10 football games, you're in the playoff. That's just the reality with 12 teams now. So you'd have to overachieve. You'd have to be better than I think and better than everyone thinks. But I do not believe that is outside the realm of possibility. I want to have an interesting, short little conversation here, ladies and gentlemen, that we haven't really had before on the show. But it's, if Conner Weigman has a great season, which I believe he will, and he moves on to the NFL after this upcoming season, is there a world where he does, A, move on to the NFL, and then B, if he does, who is Texas A&M's starting quarterback for the 2025 season? That's going to be our conversation coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. So, is that realistic? Is there a world where Conner Weigman gets drafted after this year? I believe so. And once again, we talk about this all the time. The NFL scouts absolutely love Conner Weigman. They love the arm talent. They love the ability to use his legs. I believe Conner Weigman's going to have a good year, and he's going to be a great NFL player, especially if the Aggies go 10-2 like we just got done talking about. If that happens, Conner Weigman's off to the NFL. So the question then becomes, if that were to happen, who would start at quarterback for Texas A&M during the 2025 season? And my immediate reaction to that is I think it's going to be Marcel Reed. You know, you look at a player like Jalen Henderson, and I love him. And I remember I got a comment saying, someone commented a couple months ago and said, Andrew, you don't believe in Jalen Henderson at all. And I mean, that's just flat out not true. Because I think that the better player is Marcel Reed does not mean that I think that Jalen Henderson's not a great player. And then, of course, you'd also have Hassan Longstreet, mixed into this conversation. So I don't think Longstreet starts as a freshman. I think that it would either be Henderson or Marcel Reed. And I'll tell you, I think that Marcel Reed it has the higher upside than Henderson. I think they're both great players. And that's what I'm saying. I don't want y'all to think that I am a Henderson hater, because I'm not. He's an incredible football player. But so is Marcel Reed, and you have to play one of them. So I think that the guy that ends up winning that job is Marcel Reed. And once again, this is only if Conner Weigman has this massive season and leaves after the upcoming 2024 season. But I definitely think there's a world where that happens. And if it does happen, yes, I do believe that Marcel Reed would be the starting quarterback for the Texas A&M Aggies. But I think this is a really fun conversation that we'll definitely have if the season ends and Conner Weigman declares and we're having to figure out, hey, who's going to be the starting quarterback for the Aggies? I mean, you'd have a legit battle in the offseason, and that would be a ton of fun next year. But it would take Conner Weigman having a good season, which I think he's capable of doing, but he would have to do it. So, we'll just have to see what happens there. But let me know in the YouTube comments y'all's thoughts on this conversation. If Conner Weigman leaves, who starts for the Aggies during the 2024 season, or 25 season? I'm anxious to hear what y'all have to say. That is going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Aggies. Thank y'all so much for being here every single day. Really, really appreciate it. We are inching closer and closer and closer day by day to that 2,000 subscriber mark on YouTube. So keep hitting that subscribe button. It really does help the show a ton, helps me a ton. And then, hey, if you're listening on a podcast platform, leave 5 stars. That also helps the show a ton. Thanks for all you do. Once again, it wouldn't be possible for me to be able to do the show every single day if it wasn't for you all, the listeners. I appreciate y'all. Hope everybody has an absolutely outstanding rest of their day today. And we will see you tomorrow right here on Locked On Aggies.